What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Tape. TJ Wengert here with you. And today, we're going to break out my early 2026 offensive line rankings. We're talking top 10 offensive tackles. I'll throw in some honorable mentions, of course. And we're going to talk top 10 interior offensive linemen. And again, some more honorable mentions there as well. Then after this week, we're going to jump over to corners next week. Excited to bring on a guest for that one, someone that I go back a few years with now, making content with. So excited to have them on the show next week. Wish we could have made it happen here for offensive line, but my schedule ultimately became a little bit too frustrating, honestly, as the guy who's going through it all. But guys, let's waste no time. Let's jump into it. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who's the best offensive lineman, whether it's tackle, guard, center? Let me hear your thoughts. Who are the guys that you would say are going to go in the first round? Call your shot now. I'd love to hear those thoughts in the comment section or in a reply back to this if you're watching on X, or feel free to just shoot me a DM on X. You can follow me and message me at TJ Wengert. My last name is spelled Wengert. Well, kicking things off, we got Max Ihanachor, the tackle from Arizona State, going into his senior year. You'll see some of the PFF grades there. They're nothing special or anything that really wows you here. So he gets on at number 10 as a bit of a projection pick for me. But I like the body. He's got a nice dense build, but it's evenly distributed. He's got long arms, and he's a pretty nice athlete all in all. And I think especially out of his stance, you see an explosive athlete out of the stance. Love that. You're also talking about a guy who just started playing football 3 years ago. And that's ultimately one of the biggest things I'm buying into here. Guy started playing 3 years ago, started the JUCO level, and then worked his way to Arizona State last year. And now he's going into his second season as a starter there with the Sun Devils. So I see a guy with all these athletic traits and the physical traits to go with it, and a guy who's just now kind of figuring out the game. And it's ultimately, when you take into context that last year was his third year playing football, 72 overall pass blocking grade, not too bad. Some of the negatives in Ihanachor's game right now, and there's definitely some things to be refined, no doubt about it. He gets beat by speed, which, again, a guy who's explosive out of his stance, you don't really want to see that, but that to me signals this guy still needs some coaching. And then his feet overall just really aren't that quick, but he's explosive out of his stance. So I think just natural coaching there. And then I think spatial awareness, again, that's something that can be fixed, in some of it's a natural feel, whether you have it or not. It's just kind of an instinct thing. But it's also something that you just become more aware of as you play more football. And then his hands, he just doesn't land consistently with timing or, placement at the best moment, or at the best spot. So little things like that with his hand placement, there's still work to be done. But talking about a guy who was a Feldman freak list, and all things considered 3 years in, there's something to work with here. So I'm excited to see second year at a power forward level with that coaching staff. What are the jumps made for this year? That's going to be the thing I keep my eye on this year. Ihanachor, you can definitely see there's some physical traits and some athletic traits that are interesting. There's just little finer points of his game that need to be refined and tweaked. How many of those get taken care of this year? And it's one of those things where once you see a guy, hey, okay, he's taken, he took half those those action items off his list. He corrected these three things. And now I can feel that much better about him going into the league with even better coaching and even more resources at his disposal for him to take it the rest of the way. So right now I'm kind of looking at him as, probably a developmental late day 2 guy, maybe even getting into early day 3. But nonetheless, he's the guy with, the physical and athletic traits that I'm willing to take a shot on. Real quick, I'll give you a couple of my honorable mentions. Let's go from OT 15 for me right now is Ethan Oniwa. Bryce transferred to Ohio State. Massive human being, and he plays violent. I just got to see what he looks like at a power forward level. So the sample size there is going to be paramount. And we'll talk about that with someone on, a little bit later on as well. Number 14, Austin Barber, big frame, 6'6", 314, an explosive athlete, and he's pretty flexible for his size. More often than not, like leverage battle, not necessarily something he struggles with. And he comes with pretty good length. I just think he needs to add more mass, needs to be a more violent finisher in the run game. And I think there's times where guys get into his chest and they give him some issues. My OT 13, Emil Wagner, the big reason why he's not in the top 10 is, he's still 290 pounds. At least that's what I have as list weight. If he gets up to 300, 305, playing that right tackle spot, I think there's something to work with there. And he's still probably someone you want to draft and stash for another year to try to get him to 310, 315 in a perfect world. But like for, the San Francisco 49ers, like if you wanted to draft and stash him behind a guy like Colton McKivitz, I know McKivitz on a 1-year deal, so we'll see what they do this upcoming offseason. But he could be a guy you draft and stash and kind of play behind him. He's a great scheme fit there for sure. But he's got the length to protect on an island. He's got adequate strength for being 290, which is interesting. Plays with pretty good leverage. He's a little high cut, but ultimately I don't think you see that a whole lot with his, when it comes to playing with leverage. I think the hand placement's pretty good too. Like, this is a guy who's definitely gotten some Notre Dame coaching points, and you see the technical refinement in this game. He's just got to get bigger, and then let's even out some of that, leverage. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. So especially for a guy who's 6'6", sometimes he's just playing a little upright, but I don't think it's because of his hips or anything like that. I think it's just he's coming out of his stance, and instead of blowing up through a guy, he's just standing straight up. So little things that can be worked on there, and I trust Notre Dame's coaching staff to get that ironed out. My OT12, Jude Bowery, going to be the left tackle this year at Boston College once again. Last year played 715 snaps on the left side. He's light on his feet, and overall a pretty good athlete. I would put him in a zone blocking offense. The only thing that really, one of the things that kept him off this list, I should say, arm length definitely not the longest, so TBD on what that arm length eventually comes into once we get official numbers. And then another one of these guys where it comes from his lower half, where he'll make some nice initial contact, but he can't finish and, I don't want to say play through the whistle per se, but like he's just not that type of finisher. Doesn't have that type of power, send a guy through the earth, that type of strength. And I think a lot of that's just because his lower half leaves a little bit to be desired. So a little bit lower body mass, a little bit more muscle, a little bit more, strength and power in his game, finish off those run blocks. And then he could definitely be someone who gets in the top 10 by the end of the year. And then number 11, and he's going to be a guy we talk about with the interior offensive line, Charles Jagusaw. I've heard Jagosa as well. Let me know. I'm a Notre Dame fan, but I've always heard Jagusaw. But that's what I'm going to run with right now. 6'7", 320. Big thing for him is it's just injuries, man. He only played in 2 games last year, and then before this season, breaks his arm in an ATV accident. So it's just really talented football player, former 4-star recruit, and even the tape last year, right? He's thrown in to the offensive line, playing left tackle against Ohio State in the national championship. And for the most part, for 85% of that game, I'd say, he had a leg up on JTT. Your JTT got him a little early, and then a couple moments there throughout the rest of the game. But for the most part, that was Jagusa's battle that he won. But great size, great athleticism, nimble feet, and then also power, both as an anchor and pass pro, but also driving off the ball and moving guys in the run game. It's just, can he stay healthy? And then ultimately, where does he play, right? Because they also really like Anthony Knapp, who's going into sophomore season. So is he playing tackle? Emil Wagner, we just talked about, playing right tackle. So Jagusa playing left. Is he playing on the interior? 6'7", a little tall for a guard spot, but we're also starting to see that a little bit more frequently. So he's in the interior offensive line rankings once we get into my top 10. But did want to shout him out there. He's my OT 11. So I'm open to both ways. Like it's gonna be really interesting to see where Notre Dame ultimately decides to line him up. So that's Max Ihanachor, as well as 5 honorable mentions for the tackles. Let's get into my OT 9. It's Blake Miller, guy who been around, following the draft for a few years now. This has been a name that you're familiar with. You've been watching. When won't he come out? 6'6", 315, a senior for the Tigers. I really like this player on the move. Really fluid athlete. And a lot of that helps make up for where he doesn't have a whole lot of power, getting into one of the negatives there. But hand placement's generally really good. He's got quick hands at that. But he's also patient at the same time. I know that sounds like quick hands. He's quick to fire. But I saw a couple times where, an edge rusher tried to pull the ghost move on him, tried to get him out leaning, and he just didn't take the bait. So he was going to wait for the attack to come to him. And that's a fine line of being proactive and reactive there on the offensive line. But you could just see where this guy's played a lot of football, and he's just got that nuance down. Good grip strength as well. The big thing is, if you made him 10 pounds heavier, and he's listed at 315, not a shot. Maybe going into this year, he's actually 315. I think last year he was listed at closer to 300, 305. And that I probably believe, maybe even a smidge below that. Like if Emil Wagner looks and plays like 290, Miller to me last year was probably like right at 300, maybe a couple pounds below it. Maybe a couple pounds ahead of it, but I'd be willing to say he was 295 to 300, somewhere in that range. So if he's actually at 310, 315, we've got something here. And it'd be, again, another 49ers honorable mention here. If you decide to move on from Colt McKivitz, you want to plug and play someone on day 2 that can play for you right away. I think Blake Miller is that. And that's right. OT 9, day 2 grade, probably 3rd round. We're talking mid 3rd round, in my eyes right now. But this is good offensive tackle class, man. There's a lot of guys I really like in this bunch. The big negative for Blake is he just needs to add muscle mass. He's got to get stronger. And at a program like Clemson, it's like there's no shortage of resources. So is it you from like a work standpoint, or is it your body just simply can't add the mass? Sometimes that's a thing, sometimes guys just can't put on muscle in the spots and add mass to the spots that they want to. And that's just, bad genetics, but if he's truly bulked up 10 pounds, I'm curious to see if that's in his lower half. Because right now, the only time he's going to drive someone off the line of scrimmage and make a true impact run block is if he's pulling from right tackle spot over to the left side of the line and he's getting that head of steam. And it's because he's a good fluid athlete. Now, again, that's kind of the catch-22 here. You don't want to get him to bulk up too much and lose some of that fluidity and that movement skills. But I think he's got plenty. I think he can spare a little bit there if you then gain more mass and more power once he does make contact. Or if you're not pulling him, to get more drive off the line of scrimmage, because that is definitely one of the spots where he leaves a good bit to be desired. But as well as his anchor, right? If a guy's getting into his chest, he will definitely get driven back. One of the few other things I want to note here, I think blitz pickup could be a little bit better, especially for a guy who has played as much football as he's had. There was just a couple times, specifically in the Stanford game I have written down in my notes here, where just, stunts, twists, and then blitzers that kind of just evaded his field of vision, I guess. Too much confusion or wrong assignment, wrong communication, whatever the case may be, they went completely right by him. So just little things like that, especially going into, another year of watching him for draft prep. It's like, okay, you've been around the block. You should be better at this. So curious to see how that pans out. But to me, the biggest thing is like, just got to be stronger. And if he's stronger this year, he could definitely be someone who's like late second round type of conversation. And maybe even a smidge earlier than that for the right scheme, right? Sometimes scheme just plays a big part of the equation for where someone will go. Like there's some teams that had Jonas Avenaya nowhere near the top 40, but the Dolphins took him just outside the first round, so because they felt like his movement skills, he's a good scheme fit for what we want to do, and we need to bolster up the interior offensive line. So the right scheme, I could see, and he's got to add that muscle mass. As it is right now, I'd say mid, third round. But if he adds the right amount of mass and he keeps the movement skills, I can see mid to late second as well. All right, let's get on to my off the tackle number 8, Caleb Tiernan. Just a rock solid, steady football player, man. Another guy who's just played a ton. 764 snaps last year at the left tackle side. You go back to 2022, I did want to note this, almost 500 snaps on the right side too. So you're getting a guy with experience on both ends of the offensive line, which is definitely nice to see. 84.6 overall PFF grade. You see a stellar pass blocking grade there, 88.9. And then by the time he gets through this season, barring any injuries, he will have 3.5 years of starting experience at a Power 4 school. Now, I know it's not Ohio State, it's not Michigan, but it's a Power 4 program with Power 4 resources and coaching. So that is awesome. And he's just one of these guys who just doesn't get bothered by anything. Like nothing is overwhelming. I'm not going to get stressed. I'm not going to get taxed about anything. I'm just, okay, cool. We're going through it. Done. Next play. Going through it. Done. Next play. Calm, cool, collected. Different position, but I use that a lot to describe Upton Stout at the Senior Bowl last year, where, this guy from Western Kentucky is getting matched up with receiver from Miami, receiver from this Power 4, receiver from Maryland, all these big name guys, Jaden Higgins, Dalen, and he doesn't once look overwhelmed. Like he's going stride for stride on a deep ball. He's got great click and close if they're going to try to run something underneath or try to run the comeback route. He's just so calm and poised that nothing ever felt phased, and he's a good athlete. And a lot of that was kind of how I felt about Caleb Tiernan watching him. And doing so in the Big Ten with plenty of good edge rushers, against him. I think the Ohio State game is probably the weakest game he had last year, but, those guys got a lot of dudes last year. But even in that game, confident, cool, calm, collected, and cool under pressure. So, like that. He's super confident in pass protection, really consistent hand placement. Also, the timing of the hands is really good. And also a player who gets out and moves pretty well for 320 pounds. The arms, getting into the negatives here, they're a little bit on the shorter side, which is weird for someone who's 6'7". We'll see if that's the true verified measurement, but his arms look short for even like 6'5". So I think he'll clear 32 inches, but it's going to be another one of those Northwestern conversations. And I've heard some say that it's going to be just underneath 32, but I think it's going to be pretty much right at 32. And then when it comes to the run game, I feel like he's a little top heavy. When you look at it, and oftentimes I'll say like evenly distributed. And when you just look at a guy, it's like, yeah, the top half matches the lower half. For a guy like Caleb Tiernan, I feel like he's a little top heavy. And I think you especially see that in the run game. Like he's good getting to a spot. He's a good mover on the run. So in a zone blocking scheme, get to this landmark, create a lane, and our running back's going to decide whether to stay out wide or cut upfield. But they also run some gap, or they might run inside zone where it's a little bit less of hit this wide landmark. It's more so directly in front of you. And I just don't think he has a whole lot of leg drive to get guys off the line of scrimmage. So another one of these guys where like, man, if we could just hit the squat rack that much harder, just get a little bit more in that lower half, that would be fantastic. And that would make me feel that much more confident and probably move him up this board a little bit. Right now, I look at a calm, cool, collected, easygoing pass protector who would fit a zone blocking scheme way more than he would in a gap. And then we're going to go TBD on the arm length. But if this year, there's a little bit more on that lower half and we get the arm length measurement to check out, then we're gonna be in a good spot. Only other thing I wanted to note here, there were a couple times specifically against Michigan where they got up underneath him. He's 6'7". Some guys with speed and good bend and ankle flexion, they're gonna get underneath someone who's 6'7". Just something you're gonna have to live with. And that's kind of the downside of drafting tall tackles. So it's not for everyone. I know some people have kind of pivoted towards like, I want a 6'3" tackle. I kind of find myself in that boat. Leverage is everything. We even talked about in the defensive line rankings, I'm kind of where I used to want 6'5", 260, or 270 as an edge rusher. I'm almost kind of leaning the direction of like, give me 6'3", 260. Yeah, give me that leverage. I like that more. But anyways, just kind of how I'm feeling about, that position at this current moment. But Caleb Tiernan's still a really, really good football player, really confident in pass protection. And at the end of the day, that's what you're drafting these guys for. Let's get on to my OT number 7, Trevor Gooseby. And this guy has the talent to, no exaggeration here, shoot all the way up to 1. And it wouldn't shock me. Thought about having him even higher, but you're looking at a guy who played 319 snaps last year, 202 at left tackle, 115 at right tackle. And I will say, I think he looked noticeably more confident at left tackle. And that's what he played in high school. So that makes all the sense in the world. But it is nice to see he had fill-in opportunities for both spots. He is stepping into that left tackle spot voided by Kelvin Banks Jr., number 9 overall draft pick this last year by the Saints. So Gooseby, Feldman freaks list guy. You like that he's played on both sides of the offensive line. And not only did he play against, both sides of the offensive line, look at that pass blocking grade, 80.8. And that comes against competition being Georgia, Clemson, Texas A&M. Clemson's got the best defensive line in the country coming into this year. UGA's always got a formidable defense. And last year it featured 2 first-round edge rushers and Michael Williams, Jalen Walker. And then Texas A&M, which featured 2 first-round edge rushers, first 2-round edge rushers. Shamar Stewart who went 17, Scorton who went top of the second round to Carolina. And then it also has Cassius Howell in rotation, who's going to, probably have a breakout season this year for the Aggies. So great competition. And he passed all those tests with flying colors, specific in pass protection. So the only reason he's not higher, I just got to see more of it, and even, that's a murderer's row of defensive linemen. But Michael Williams was a little bit of a work in progress as, a pass rusher. Stewart, elite disruptor, number 10, top 10 player on my board. Love me some Shamar Stewart. Elite disruptor, not a great finisher. Scorton had a similar type of year, not quite the Purdue season that he had a year before that. So, just throwing a couple of caveats in there, not to take it away from him, but also there's some of those guys where you're more impressed with what they can do as a run defender right now than you were as a pass rusher. That being said, still had reps against TJ Parker, and that's super impressive. And that's my edge 1 going into the year. So both can be true here for Gooseby. But I do think he's more natural left tackle, and he's just a great athlete with really nice hand placement already. You can just see, especially on the left side, just so much more confident. And he's really polished from a pass protection side. Weirdly enough, the run blocking is what kind of left a little bit desired. Part of that, I think 312, that's what they're listing you at. He's probably closer to 305. So if we can get up to a true 312, 315, that would be good. Make me feel that much better about him getting movement off the line of scrimmage. But the other thing too is for a good athlete, and again, I noticed this a little bit more when he's at right tackle, there'd be some backside blocks he's just not getting to. And I mean, wide zone stuff for Steve Sarkisian. So that backside block it's a thing to get. And a lot of it's just guy being good athlete, getting to mark and then, shielding off that defender. And there would just be times where he didn't get there. Now, I don't know if he's just thinking too much. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, I should be here. Oh man, I missed it. Is it something like that? Or is it just because he was playing right tackle? So on some on the left side, but I felt like I noticed it more in the games where he played right tackle. So I'm a little interested in that. And I heard Dalton Miller talking about that too in a video he did with James Foster too. So I'm glad I'm not the only one who saw that and was a little interested with that. And then, yeah, when he gets to the second level, kind of looks like he's, again, is he thinking? I'm not entirely sure. But you can just kind of tell he's not the full sense of urgency. And when you see him move and his hand fighting and pass protection looks confident. Him climbing to the second level, him on these backside blocks just doesn't look the same, and he doesn't look as confident. So that's to be expected, though, for a guy with less than 320 career snaps so far. So I think this year we should see, a guy who had a full offseason, knowing he's going to be the starter, working with a Texas coaching staff that is one of the best in the country. So he should be naturally more confident, and he should, kind of check all those boxes going into this season. And now we get to see what it really looks like on a full-time basis, full sample, hopefully 14, 15, 16 games this year for Texas. And we get to see him against, hopefully, a gauntlet of edge rushers. And we get to see him, in the biggest game potentially of all season. I know, crazy enough to say that week 1, Texas and Ohio State. Cannot wait for that game this weekend. But that's going to be a good test right off the rip for Gooseby. So like a ton of what I see, just need to see more of it. All right. Offensive tackle number 6 is Xavier Chaplin, Auburn. He is the Virginia Tech transfer. And this is one of those dancing bear types, 6'7", 335. And my golly, he looks it. Another one of these guys where I think the top half's a little bigger than the bottom half. And I think, he can displace people in the run game, but I think more that's his arm length. This guy's got freaking vines for arms. Absolute tree branches shooting out of his shoulders. So that's where I think the movement comes from in the run game a little bit more. He's just initiating contact. And ultimately it is lower leg drive. So he's moving guys off the line of scrimmage, but maybe it's just part of it is like 335, just a little bit more of it's on the top half. But to me, he just looks a little bit more top heavy than like fully just evenly built, but not quite as much as Caleb Tiernan. But let's just go ahead and stick on with the negatives. 7 holds in false starts last year, just little things like that. You just can't have it. Also, Virginia Tech's offense, that's a pleasure to watch right there. That is an interesting offense, but there's also not a whole lot of translatability. So even just going to a huge Hugh Freeze offense, it's going to look different. It's going to look different for Chaplin. So curious to see how he handles that, and curious to see what it looks like in a more NFL translatable environment. And then his feet in pass pro to me feel a little heavy. Right now, he feels like a guy I'm 335 pounds, I'm 6'7". It's hard to get around me, and I have great arm length. I'm just going to jab. I'm just going to, and it's just keeping you at bay. But if you were to try to really get around the corner, he'll probably just push you out of the pocket. But I do think you might have a pathway there. His feet just to me are a little bit slow in pass protection. And there were some times with stunts and loops where he just didn't have the recovery speed to get back into the frame. Now, I've seen guys like Penei Sewell recover and get back into frame, and that's like all-time freakiest stuff I can see from an offensive lineman. So that's not really to knock him too hard, considering he is 6'7", 335. There's only, it's sliders. Frame and power with great arm length. Okay, you're going to have to give up a few points in the athletic traits. Otherwise, we'd be talking about offensive tackle 1 here, no doubt. So I think the feet can get a little bit heavy there, and I want to see him clean up some of those penalties, but you're talking about a dense human being with long arms, and he's pretty accurate with landing with his hands too, which is really, really impressive. And once he gets his hands on the inside part of your chest, he's tough to overcome. And I don't know if I really saw a second effort sack given up by Chaplin. I don't know if somebody on their second effort against him got the best of him. So there's a lot to like here. And that being said, it's going to look a lot different in this Auburn offense, considering what it looked like at Virginia Tech. And he's stepping into the SEC now. So it's been great, I'm sure, to have Keldrick Falk going one-on-one with him throughout the offseason, but it's going to get real this year when they see those SEC edge rushers and the guys at Bama and the guys at Florida and so on and so forth. So it's just going to be a different environment, and it's going to be another level of a test this year for Xavier Chaplin. But I like a lot of what I see. All right, let's get on my offensive tackle number 5. 6'8", 312, Isaiah World. I just want to start with that because I've heard it's probably closer to 6'4", which, okay, he still looks huge. He still looks huge on tape. And this is one where it's like perfectly distributed, like from head to toes, perfect build, like top to bottom, evenly distributed. Love to see that. That said, I do think he could probably still add another 5 to 8 pounds. He's listed at 312. I'd say he's probably close to 305. So if we could get up to a true 310, 315, that would be ideal. You can kind of see what I'm looking for, what's an ideal threshold. And also, he moves really well for 305. So I think he's got room for 5 more pounds. But you're talking about a 3-year starter at Nevada with long arms, a really nice, evenly distributed build again. But patient and precise with his hands in pass pro, which is really encouraging, especially considering I think he's about to get a lot better coaching and have that much more at his disposal at Oregon. No disrespect to Nevada, but there's just levels to this. And Oregon is just at the top of that level, or is, among the top level of that. So it's nice to see the pass pro and the hand refinement already be there, because there's a lot of other things I want to see cleaned up. So it's nice that they don't have to focus that much on that. And also, speaking of his hands, counters well, right? Like if he doesn't get that initial punch, he doesn't get that first land, he'll keep fighting and keep fighting. And some of that things just, he's got really nice feet. And again, if he doesn't get that first contact, he can kind of reset, put himself into another, he kind of reposition his body with how well his feet work. And you're not getting pushed all the way back to the pocket, but he'll give an inch to gain a mile in regards to his, how he works his feet and reestablishing contact with his hands. So like a lot of that. And again, that doesn't sound like a guy who's, coming from Nevada. Like that sounds like a guy who's understood the position and has some smarts. So whoever that offensive line coach did do some good stuff here, but I do think there is more work to be done with World. One, let's just talk about another one of these things with like Chaplin and Ethan Aniwa going to Ohio State. This is as big a step up in competition as you can imagine. Nevada's not bad, but Oregon, again, they're going to play creme de la creme in that schedule. So it's a huge year, and it's also a lot harder of an offense, I think, to operate. So harder assignment, more difficult schedule. Another one of these guys who is just to play more under control. But so with penalties, 11 holding penalties, 4 unsportsmanlike conduct / unnecessary roughness penalties over the last 3 years. That's too much. It's too much. So he's just got to keep his head on his shoulders. And that's where I think it feels like in Nevada, he was just the baddest dude around and he was the best player. So you got to have a little bit more leeway. Now at Oregon, it's like, hey, we're going to take this great talent. We're going to refine a few things, but also we're going to keep your head on the right way. We're going to keep you on the straight and narrow, and we're going to make you a first-round pick. Because I think that talent, dude, this guy's talented enough to go in the first round. I ended up coming around and being a huge Josh Connerly fan. Got to talk to him at the Senior Bowl. That's on this channel. It was a great experience. But going into this season, I liked him. But I am more bullish about World now than I was 365 days ago about Josh Connerly, if that makes sense. So really optimistic here. Just want to see, and I think good power, but I do think, especially the screen game at Oregon, this is going to be a good test for what's that look like, right? How under control are you there out in the space? Just not something you see a whole lot of at Nevada. He's going to have that opportunity to go lead the way on a receiver screen, running back screen, what have you, and do that a good bit. So I want to see how poised and control, one with his body, but also like some guys just want to go for the home run hit and they'll whiff because of it. So like, what does Isaiah World look like at the P4 level? Does he want to go for the kill shot, or is he going to be calm, cool, collected, be a good athlete and go through a guy and just sustain the block? And that's more important to him. So just a couple of things right there. I want to keep my eyes on there, but first round guy to me. Yep. This is pretty much the bridge. Chaplin, I'd probably say right now, early 2, just because of the feet. And then I want to see how he handles the jump from Vatek to Auburn. But World would be like, okay, we're crossing from that early 2nd to late 1st conversation. And then I think that's even more the case. And honestly, maybe even mid first round here for Caleb Lomu, 6'5", 304. We'll start with that. 304 pounds. This guy, he might be a year away. Maybe he's a 2027 guy because he's got to get bigger. And again, 304, that's what they're listing at, brother. I need that 315, 312. Come on, meet me somewhere here in the middle. But the bright side is him, and then the guy who's going to be towards the top of this ranking are both third-year guys, right? One's a true junior, Lomo, redshirt sophomore. So you were talking about a guy on the younger side. So there is time to add to his frame, which is certainly encouraging. But other than adding 10 pounds, sometimes I think he throws his punches a little too early. Again, I think that's just a coaching thing and something for a young player that you're fine with. And then I think he gets caught leaning from just time to time, especially as a run blocker. He'll get out in front of his skis. Again, pretty easy to fix. Something that's manageable to be coached up. And I do think, again, this Utah offensive line, their coach knows his thing or two because he's done something well with these tackles. And this is the first of 2 we're going to talk about, and he's my OT 4. So, yeah, Caleb Lomu, like a lot of there. Those were just the nitpicks, but very good athlete, 4-star recruit. I think he's got adequate arm length. He's going to be another guy to kind of monitor there. Does he clear 32? I think it might be a little close, but I think he will just barely do it. I think he's really accurate, kind of like what we were talking about with World. Won't he be this guy who out in space wants to play like a maniac and light someone up and then maybe miss blocks because of it? Lomu gets out into open space and he's very calm, poised, and controlled with his body, and he'll land and sustain blocks. I mean, not light you up and be on Sports Center because of it, but he got the job done and he made the play for his team. He's got really good eyes when there's pressure. I think he picks up the blitz and stunts really well. Again, I think, I don't know the offensive line coach there at Utah, but he's clearly doing something right with these guys. And then he's just rock solid in pass pro. His feet, his hands, his eyes, all of it works in unison, makes him a really, really solid pass protector. And he has one of the best trap moves in this class. I would say him and Chaplin, like 2 of the best trap moves you'll see from anybody in this class. And it's really fun to see Lomo do that because he's not like the big, powerful physical offensive tackle you would think is just going to grab someone by the shoulder pads and chuck them down. But again, it's just he sees it well. His hand-eye coordination is top-notch. And also, I think a lot of that is core strength, right? He's just got good body control from top to bottom, and that's what leads him to be able to do that. Let's go on to my offensive tackle, number 3, CC Maui Noah from Miami, 6'6", 315. Now, this is one where he looks it. Yeah, I think he's already got the body, he's got the frame, and he's got the power already. So no more, keep going to the weight room, keep getting stronger, do whatever you got to. But no, this is a guy that I'm not going to say needs to add weight to fit at the next level. Former 5-star recruit coming out of high school and has been playing and starting for Miami since he was a true freshman. So, man, definitely has the goods. And this guy can stall speed to power with the best of them. It's just because he plants these tree trunks of legs that he has into the earth, sticks those heels on the ground. And that is a tough human being to move from that point on. So great for when it comes to stalling speed to power, but also dumps defenders in the run game. Like off the snap, good luck. This guy has an abundance of power and he has that huge frame to go with it. But I do want to also say his feet fire pretty quickly. And again, that's why I think like 315, if that's truly what he's at, I think that's the right weight. Don't want to see him getting really bigger. I'd love to see him get stronger for sure, but he's already got plenty of muscle. And right now his feet work really well in unison with the rest of his body. So I really like where his frame and his body's at right now. I think he gets caught leaning from time to time, specifically against speed rushers. A lot of times I'll note that, and it's more so in the run game. I think this guy's pretty confident when it comes to blowing up the guy across from him in the run game, just because he's a mammoth of a human being and he knows he's strong. But against speed rushers, you can tell he's probably thinking about it. He's 6'6". This guy's going to get underneath me, and he gets caught reaching, and that only complicates the issue even more. And I think he's another one of these guys I'd like to see him play a little bit more under control. Lomu, he gets out into space and he'll connect and sustain the block. Maui Noah is going to try to unload, a barrel of TNT on someone and trying to make the big play, trying to land the highlight reel. And sometimes he whiffs because of it, or he just grazes the guy and gets a, glancing blow. So I'd like to see him be more consistent there, sustain those blocks. It was something I said about Kelvin Banks throughout all of last draft cycle. And at the end of the day, once you get to the pros, I think things just, you're not in college. You step into the real world, and I think you'll take those coaching points a little bit more, I don't want to say seriously, but for lack of a better word, seriously. And you'll incorporate it into your game more. Right now, I think these guys know they're really good at college, and they're kind of trying to get away with what they can get away with. So I think it's coachable. I think it's refinable. I'd like to see him do it at college, but if he gets to an NFL program, like they're going to get that sorted out. I don't think he's going to continue to be that type of player all of his NFL career, but like a lot of what's there. And now I'm just going to see another year of it at Miami. So that's going to be a fun team to watch this year. Obviously, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I hope they don't win week 1. But other than that, I'm rooting for the Hurricanes and a lot of their prospects throughout the course of the season. All right, let's get on to my offensive tackle number 2, Caden Proctor. No real surprise here. 360-pound human being that won the Anthony Munoz Award for best high school offensive tackle. Another one of these guys who highly touted recruit, been starting at Bama for 3 years, or going into his 3rd year now since he was a true freshman. So Maui Noah, Proctor, not only highly touted recruits, but they got on the field at these prestigious programs and then earned playing time right away. That's just a lot in and of itself. 360 pounds, this goes without saying. This guy is a monster of a human being. And I think that works mostly in his favor, but it does create a little bit of a crutch. So I'll come back to that in just a moment. But I think he's got really good vision and awareness. This is not just a big football player. This is a smart football player, which makes for a really interesting package there. And I think he moves well. He moves well for 360, which makes me wonder, like Anthony Belton got to the Senior Bowl last year and reportedly went from like 370 some to 345. And I thought his feet looked so much better because of it. So if you told me Caden Proctor could get to 345, 350, I'd be really curious to see what we got here. Again, he blows people up off the line of scrimmage. So, yes, you want to keep that mass. You want to keep that power. But 350 is still a big number. And considering he already moves really well, I think that would be really interesting. But it also will come back and factor into one other thing we're going to talk about with the negatives. But he already moves really well and can be as crazy as this is to say about 360. He could be a zone blocking scheme fit. That's kind of nuts to say. And force equals mass times acceleration. This is a guy with a ton of mass. And he moves pretty well. So once that mass times acceleration hits you, it will create a ton of force. So again, could be an absolute weapon in a zone blocking scheme, but trust me, get him in gap too. That would be a lot of fun. Getting on to the negatives now. The arms are a little weirdly short. Doesn't make sense for his body proportion, but it's kind of like Caleb Tiernan, where why are these 6'7" guys a little stubby? I just guess the way they were born. The hand placement's the big thing where it's like, this guy is talented and he can move so well. And he's got this raw power for someone his age, but the hands can miss high and wide a little too much for me. So I'd like to see that get coached up, but it hasn't come back to hurt him. And this is kind of going back to where I think his size is a little bit of a crutch for him. He's huge. He is unbelievably huge. And I just think our defensive linemen and edge rushers just can't get around him, like legitimately. Like it sounds like something I'm describing from, like, I don't know, South Park. But I think that honestly is the case. And I think that's part of why also, like, he's just this big human being, hard to get around, and he's 360 pounds. Who's going through him? So you have to kind of go around. So I think that also makes up for his arm length deficiency, because where are you going to go? Like, I know where you're going, So I think that plays into his hand, but also, works against him. So it's kind of like a net even there. It balances itself out. But that thing coming into the next thing I wanted to talk about, trying to get down another 10 pounds, I think I'm conflicted on that, because guys don't want to go through him right now. 350 is tough to go through, but 360 definitely is. It's that much harder. But I will say in the fourth quarter, I think you start to lose a little bit of steam. The hands are firing a little bit less quickly. The feet are moving a little bit slower. I think once you get into the fourth quarter, you start to feel his size on his own, like what it does to his knees and what it just does for his conditioning in general. So that's one other negative. But for someone who is young, and I think, 5-star recruit, from all sounds of it, has the work ethic to get out these little minor things, I think losing 10 pounds is something that's certainly obtainable. And I do also want to note, I have no way of verifying this, but apparently he did get hurt week 1 of last year. So these little things where, maybe the stamina kind of died off for me in the fourth quarter. And, the anchor, the technique there could be a lot better. That might all root back to the injury. Hard to tell, other than once we get, 2025, 26 tape, and we have something to compare it against if he is truly healthy. So a little bit of a wait and TBD there. But yeah, for someone who's 360 pounds, his anchor definitely could be a lot better. But that's a coaching, that's a technique thing. And again, his hands, they miss high and wide right now. So there's definitely some refinement in his technique. But 360, he's impossible to go through. He's a massive human being and hard to go around. And he moves the way he does. One, that makes it even harder to go around him because he's got feet to mirror. But 2, in the run game, he becomes an absolute weapon. So there's just so much raw, innate ability when you're talking about Caden Proctor and the package of his body plus his athletic talent. And he's 1 year away from coaching. And as a younger guy, you like to think that he can make that jump forward. And again, maybe it's just he hits half of those action items this year, but then it gives you some confidence that, hey, he's already checking off some of these things. Once he gets to the NFL level, he can continue to do that. All right, so this obviously leaves me with Spencer Fano as my offensive tackle number 1. The negative, I have 302 pounds. Can we please get up to 308 to 312? 308, 312, meet me there. We're good to go. Sometimes I think he overdoes the kick slide and gets out on his heels, and sometimes that leads to him kind of giving up leverage, exposing his chest. Guys can get into him. Doesn't happen often, but I did notice it. I also did watch Cage Casey right before this, and Cage Casey is always on his heels in pass pro. I don't know how the man stays upright most of the time, but maybe that's just lingered with my brain. So once we get updated tape, I'm going to be curious to see if that sells something I see. And another one of these guys where the arm length is going to be a point of conversation. We'll see. I think another one of these guys where he might be the one that is a little under 32 inches, unfortunately, but I think it's going to be right at the mark. And then the positives, if you're following this draft cycle and you see that 93.0 run block rate, you know what this guy does. You know what he brings to the table. This guy, I said earlier, I think CC Mauano is trying to bring dynamite to these guys out in space. Dude, like Spencer Fano off the line of scrimmage is dynamite. This guy is going to blow up anybody he is against because he has another one of these guys with tree trunks for legs, super explosive out of his stance, tons of power. And because he's 6'5", but I'd be willing to say probably 6'3.5", this guy is always winning the leverage battle. I think some of it's also his hips, man. He gets so low in his stance that fires straight up, an explosive lower half. This guy's blowing up everyone he's meeting across from at the line of scrimmage. And then also explosive out of his stance and get to a spot. He's a really good mover, can absolutely fit into a zone blocking scheme, and wants to inflict violence when he's out there in open space. So absolutely love what this guy does from a run blocking standpoint. On top of that, has fantastic grip strength, has good upper body strength. I talked a lot about the lower half. The top half can do it too and shield off defenders to create that running lane. And then he's got very quick feet and pass protection. So I'm in love with the lower half, and major pause alert, major pause alert there. That is not a clipped one out on the internet, but so much power, yet so light on his feet. And I think in pass pro, the arm length limits him a little bit. Sometimes there's just guys with longer arms that are going to get into your chest. And there's going to be a guy who gets a move on it, and you don't have the arm length to be able to recover, or push him slightly out of the pocket if he gets around your left shoulder, or in his case, his right shoulder, playing right tackle for the Utes. So little things like that. But I think those small little nitpicks and, like TBD on the arm length, those small little things are absolutely worth what you get out of this guy as a run blocker. This guy is him and Proctor. Proctor is a weapon. And then, I think the fourth quarter lose a little bit of steam. Fano, from like start to finish, is an absolute weapon in the run game, which is like weird to say about an offensive lineman. Not often that we catch myself saying that about O-linemen in regards to the run game.
It is 32 Beat Writers season, August, when they can make you a lot of money, especially on a platform like FastDraft. Doesn't have hundreds of best ball bro killers. So when there's an injury and you hear about it through 32 Beat Writers, you can run to the FastDraft app and jump into a Flex 4 game. Just draft any 6 Flex players. Top 4 enter your lineup every week. Or the Rabbit, 15-round best ball. Get your quarterback wide receiver stacks, get your running back sleepers. And if you follow 32 Beat Writers, you can jump into these draft rooms and be like, oh my God, I'm avoiding this guy at all costs, and I'm gobbling up all of this other running back before the larger public is fully aware, has fully digested the ramifications of the information that 32 Beat Writers is sharing. So go get Fast Draft, type in that code 32BW. 32BW is the code. Get you a $50 deposit match on Fast Draft. Now let's go start drafting faster.
But with all that said, let's go ahead and review. Here is my top 10 offensive tackles for the 2026 class. And then real quick, while that's up on screen again, honorable mentions, OT 11 right now is Charles Jagusa or Jagusa, pick your pronunciation. The offensive tackle, maybe interior offensive line, we'll come back to that, from Notre Dame. Jude Barry is my OT 12, left tackle from Boston College. OT number 13 is the right tackle for the Fighting Irish, Emil Wagner. OT 14 is Florida's Austin Barber. And then number 15, Rice transfer to Ohio State, Ethan Oniwa. Checks in there as my last honorable mention. Now let's go ahead and kick it over to interior offensive linemen. I would give more time to these guys, but just, peek behind the curtain. That's a video that doesn't do well on YouTube. It doesn't get a whole lot of clicks, even as a written article. So it's just easier to go ahead and lump these guys in here. Is it fair? No. But is it what we're going to do? Yes. All right, let's go ahead and start with number 10. This was, okay, so a little peek behind the curtain. And if you're watching this far into the video, you get to know it. It's a little Easter egg for you. But I was going to hopefully have Alex on from Hail Mary Sports on for today's video. But my schedule, I was the problem 100%, not Alex. But plan is to get Alex on next week, and we're going to talk cornerbacks. So really excited about that. But the reason I'm starting with that is Lyndon Cooper. It was basically between him or I was going to have Armaj Adams Reed, Armaj Reed Adams, excuse me, as this last offensive lineman. Decided to go Cooper so we could have a conversation about it with Alex. Real quick, I'll give you the honorable mention. Armaj Reed Adams, 6'5", 330. He's a grad student at A&M, played 4 years at Kansas, transferred to A&M last year. I think a rock-solid run blocker, has good power, can shield off defenders, strong upper half as well, has really good length. Just doesn't have anything that's wow-inducing as an athlete. Has the length and has the technique, just not going to wow you in regards to what he is as an athlete. So if you're fine with that and you're just looking for like a gap scheme fit guard, Armaj Reed Adams is your guy. Okay, awesome. Then let's get on to Lyndon Cooper, and I think other than Alex, I haven't heard anybody mention his name. So curious to see where he falls into most other people's ranks. But 6'2", 310-pound, redshirt junior for Pittsburgh. Really nice movement skills. I think this guy wants to get out in open space and is really solid once he does. And plays with good leverage at 6'2". I like, and specifically in a couple of reps against Peter Woods, but I'll come back to that in just a moment. Active hands in pass pro. They fire, and they fire often, and they fire quick. Nice player in the screen game overall. Good eyes and spatial awareness. A lot of times, specifically in that Clemson game, he was kind of the fifth guy. Everyone else was basically having someone rush at him, and then he's keeping his eyes aware and chipping in and helping where he can. But also a lot of stunts and twists, and sometimes you could see where the guard strayed a little too far, and then he was there to help recover. Or just in general stunt and twist, he picks up a guy and he recognized it and picked it up really quickly. A couple times early in that Clemson game, like Peter Woods just overpowers him. And that's like the one downside, like definitely lacking some power in his game. He can anchor, but the bigger the person, the less effective it's going to be. Like there's only so far 310 pounds is going to take you here. And I just don't think he has enough muscle in and of itself. So he will eventually get over muscle, but he can anchor, and he held up at a couple spots, but was more impressed with his ability to win with leverage later on in that game against Peter Woods. Woods got him a couple times early, but after that, there were just times where Woods was stalwarted at the line of scrimmage because Lyndon Cooper just had lower pads, just got up underneath and shot up underneath Peter Woods and stalled him out right there. So that's where his leverage comes into handy. But because he's a little bit shorter, because he is a little bit smaller, and you get that movement skills, you do give up a little bit of that pure muscle. So there will be times where he gets pushed back just a little bit. But I also think, you could add a little, you could add 5-10 pounds. Like, you could probably add at least 5 pounds of muscle. So I do think there's some room for him to grow in that frame. All right, then we get to Charles Jagusa, pick your pronunciation. We talked about him earlier. 4-star recruit, wrestling background, soccer background as well, which is super cool. And you see that with his feet. Again, 4-star recruit, big guy at 6'7", so he'd be a big guard. But we're starting to see the league trend a little bit closer in that direction, right? Like, Creed Humphrey was a big center. Daniel Falele played some guard for the Ravens. He was 6'8". So we're starting to see it. And then Mekhi Becton, huge human being, playing guard now. So we're starting to see this become a little bit more, accepted. So I think it's a possibility. And the reason I put him at guard is I'm just assuming he's going to play guard for Notre Dame. I haven't seen anything official there, but it's because of his ATV accident, his broken arm. Going to be a minute before he sees the field, but it does sound like he will play at some point this year. That's great size, really nice arm length, moves really, really well for his size. Only played in 2 games last year, one at right guard, the other at left tackle, and he held his own in both games. Actually, in that game again at right guard, I think he held up really well as a pass protector. And I think his movement skills, you kind of want that on the edge of your offensive line. You want that as an offensive tackle because you do more with it versus putting him in a phone booth. But still, running zone, this guy could be an absolute weapon. And his arm length, he could be really, really nice in the run game. So I can see it going either way, but I'm just assuming he's going to play guard for the Irish this year. So if he comes out, I think it's going to be at the interior spot. The big thing is he's just got to stay healthy. Man, if this guy could just stay healthy. All right, let's go to Vega Ioane, the 6'4", 348-pound redshirt junior from Penn State. And really what you picture from that is kind of the play style you get. This is a big, immovable object. And because of that, in pass protection, he's rock solid, dude. Like, he will hold up against the guy across from him. Hands fire faster than maybe you would think for 350. He's not totally Mike Iupati. He's not that sluggish. But in the feet, same thing with the feet. Like, he can move a little bit. It's nothing crazy, but it's enough in unison to make him really solid in pass protection. And then as a run blocker, 350 pounds, man. Like, he's a big, strong guy, and he will move guys off the line of scrimmage. He's got lower leg drive. He will displace humans. Putting him on the move, results may vary, especially as a puller. Sometimes he's just not getting to the spot. There's times where I thought like Drew Shelton just needed a little bit more muscle to sustain blocks. And then it'd be times where Vega here was pulling, and I just don't think he got to the spot in time. And because of that, it was kind of a glancing blow and a missed block. So not going to be a guy who moves all that well at 350 pounds, but if you're looking for a gap scheme guard, someone who's just going to light up someone from across the line of scrimmage, and someone who's going to hold his own in pass protection, Ioane is definitely a good candidate for that. All right, number 7, Logan Jones. This is going to be a guy I can't quit. 6'3", 293 pounds, grad student from Iowa. Just tenacious, violent, aggressive player who has athletic limitations just because he doesn't have great length. And all in all, like, he's 293 pounds. So that's like still a tough threshold. You'd really like to see him get up and over 300. But this guy has a stubborn resolve and fantastic grip strength to go with it. I think he moves really well. That's kind of the plus of 293 pounds. And not to say it's impossible, but 300 pounds is really the threshold we're looking to hit here. Just earlier this year, set an Iowa school record with a 700-pound squat. Are you kidding me? Like, get this guy into my football team. A little bit shorter, so he plays with great leverage. I also think there's a wrestling background here, because the grip strength and the ability to win with leverage definitely gives me former wrestler vibes. And he's just an outstanding athlete all in all with textbook technique. Now, you get over to the negative side, short arms. So guys are going to get into his chest, and it's short arms plus sub 300 pounds. So, like, he will get bull rushed. No doubt about it. But that being said, I think I'm willing to take the good with the bad here with Logan Jones. Yeah, there's going to be some times where he gets, Garrett Bradbury'd to death and he gets, just blown up. And, I just think back to that Vikings-Giants playoff game, Garrett Bradbury versus Dexter Lawrence. That's just not a battle Bradbury's going to win. There's going to be times where that happens to someone like Logan Jones, but he just moves so well and he's just such a violent player. And he comes with good technique that I'm willing to take the risk on him. So I look at him as a day 2 guy, and I feel like I'm as high on Logan Jones as anybody out there. So yes, he's a little light. Yes, he's got short arms, but he's got everything else I would want in my starting center. Logan Jones. Then we go to Jaden Roberts, gap scheme guard here, 6'4", 323, red shirt senior from Alabama. Big, powerful offensive lineman. He's actually lost a lot of weight since coming to Bama. He was up and over 350 when he originally enrolled with the Crimson Tide. So he's come down in weight. And I think you're starting to see a little bit more, nimbleness added to his game, a little bit lighter on his feet. You're starting to see some improvement in pass protection. But he's also got great drive off the line of scrimmage, a ton of natural power in Jaden Roberts' body. His just hand placement is still a little bit of a work in progress. Consistency with the timing and consistency with the placement have just got to get better. And he's just not a high-end athlete either. Like, not going to be a guy who, sets the 40 record this year or lights it up with the 3-cone or anything like that. So gap scheme guard, linear explosiveness, that's what you're getting here out of Jaden Roberts. Then we get to Trey Zoon the third. He's actually the left tackle for Texas A&M, but he's got sub 32-inch arms. And he's already kind of getting talked about with some of the people I've talked to in a way like Graham Barton was. Where, he's a left tackle right now, but he could be this guy who plays pretty much anywhere on the offensive line at the next level, more than likely guard and center, but like in a pinch could fill in for you at left tackle as well. Nice initial quickness off the line of scrimmage. He's a really coordinated athlete in space. Another one of these guys who I think is a little more top heavy, but pretty evenly built. But I think a little top heavy, but does move really well. His feet fire, and he's really light on him in pass protection. Flashes point of attack strength and leg drive. But I do think his power loses steam, right? Like, I think he gets a little bit of a jolt off the line of scrimmage, but then it'll kind of die out. And some of that, maybe that's 32-inch arms eventually giving in. Or I think, again, a little top heavy, maybe it's just a little bit more the lower body that, he plays tackle right now. He's choosing quicks over maybe adding a little bit of mass with his lower legs, lower half, for more explosion off the line of scrimmage and a little bit more power and finish to his run game. Also faces some pad issues. He's 6'6", so there's definitely times where he's giving up some leverage and it comes back to hurt him. But I think that's something that can get better. He's a good athlete. And I think it's just hip flexibility. So I think you can kind of work with that and improve that. And then the last thing I have here could be a little bit better out in space in the angles he takes. I just think there's a little bit to be desired there. Only watched 3 games, albeit, so I might have just picked the wrong 3 games there, but I think he could take some better angles when working out in space. Tomas Rymek, my next guard. Next guard, Tomas Rymek from West Virginia, now at Virginia Tech. 6'6", 318 pounds. He is definitely top heavy with his build, but I just love the movement skills. And then he still has great upper body strength to contort and basically adjust defenders to create the running lane. So I just love the movement, love the upper body strength, love the grip strength to go with it. Love what I see in pass protection too, really light on his feet. He looks a lot like Wyatt Milam right next to him in a lot of ways. And that's not to, helmet scout. And also they're playing right next to each other. But if you liked Wyatt Milam, I feel like you're going to like Tomas Rymek. And now he's going to play at Virginia Tech. So weird offense. Like I said earlier, it's a weird scheme and a weird offense. But maybe this year it's going to play a little different. I can only hope, since I have to watch that tape. But I love the player. I think there's a lot to work with here. Only negative I have is he's a little top heavy. And I think just like a pure gap, because West Virginia runs gap and zone pretty evenly. When they run gap, not as much drive off the line of scrimmage. I definitely think the lower half can add some and just get some overall strength in his profile, moves more guys off the line of scrimmage, but it would probably go at the expense of how light his feet are in pass protection and how much he can do as a mover in space. So it's a catch-22 there. Kind of comes down to, do you want to be a zone guard or do you want to be a gap guard at the next level? But West Virginia ran both. I think Virginia Tech, I think last year actually ran a decent bit of gap, but I'd have to double check. Don't hold me to that. But if they run some zone this year with Rymek, he's going to be a weapon for him. All right, let's get on to my number 3 interior offensive lineman. It's the last guard. It's Caden Green, 6'5", 315, true junior from Missouri. one of maybe the most powerful player of the interior offensive lineman. I think he's definitely a gap scheme. Movement skills are fine. He can do inside zone, wide zone. I think your results are going to vary. But all in all, you're getting a guy who's just a load of dynamite off the line of scrimmage, explosive lower half, quick out of his stance, and is going to light guys up. But again, also has that upper body strength to shield off defenders, make that running lane. And he's going into his third year as a starter too, which you absolutely love to see. And he's just going to be 21 by the time we get to the draft. So ton of potential there. Love the body, love the strength, love where we're getting him, right? Like a younger prospect. Love the grip strength. Negatives, I think there's sometimes stunts and twists. Again, the feet, they move well enough, especially for a guy who is, after all, 316 pounds. Big guy, looks like a big, powerful guard. But the feet, still, you got to grade on a little bit of a curve, but they're still a little bit slower and sometimes stunts and twists. I think get the best of them. And I think if, Missouri runs a lot of wide zone, and there's just sometimes he's just not hitting his mark. So other than the recovery, change of direction, and speed overall in those stunts and twists, and I just wouldn't put him in a wide zone scheme. Other than that, love the power and the arm length that comes with Caden Green. So big fan of his game. That then takes us to the top two interior offensive linemen, two centers, Parker Brailsford, 6'2", 290 pounds, redshirt junior from Alabama. And just even at Washington, Washington, he was 275 pounds, but great on the move. That's the absolute number one trait that you're getting here. And now at 290, you can say like Jason Kelsey weight. Maybe, the Eagles didn't just pick up Willie Lampkin. So, maybe it's just he's destined to be an Eagle. That's definitely their type. But anyways, fantastic on the move. Really nice lateral movement skills to cut off defenders, climb up to the second level. You name it, he brings it to the table. Really good weapon and screen game because of that. And just plays tenacious. Like a guy, even at 275, I think this was true, played more violent and aggressive than you would think for someone that size. Then I think the same is true at 290 pounds. Downside here, it's not quite Logan Jones, right? Because he's got better arm length, at least as far as I've heard, than Jones does. But there's only so much that 290 is going to stand up against. And there's times where he'll get rocked back for sure with bull rush. And then, that's really about it. That's really about it. I was looking for the next note, but it was just a continuation of that first note. Bull rush, and then guys with really good arm length, I think, are going to get the best of them. But you put this guy in San Francisco and make him your center of the future. God forbid something happens to Aaron Brewer in Miami. Plug this guy into that scheme. Or if Seattle, Oluwatimi just doesn't work out, or they're looking for a center and it's not Gray Zabel, they land a Parker Brailsford, excuse me. I think that makes all the sense in the world, and that's the fit. And then number one, Connor Liu, this has kind of become the consensus interior offensive line number one. I think he has a lot of the same skills and pluses that Brailsford has, but at 303 pounds versus 290, so you're just not drafting an outlier. But really nice quickness off the line of scrimmage, control and the movement patterns, tough physical player, solid anchor and pass protection, former wrestler and looks and plays like it through and through, and great overall awareness too. And this is going to be a really fun Auburn team to watch, and a lot of expectations this year for them. And I think he could be a big part of it for kind of being the glue of that offense and making everything kind of come together. Of course, assuming the quarterback play is okay with Jackson Arnold. But the negatives here can be more accurate with his hand strikes and just 1 year of being a full-time starter. So really grasping at straws to get that second one in there. But other than his hand placement, and I think part of that stems from just the fact he's got 1 year starting, just go get more reps, go get more experience. He should be into your offensive line number one by the time it's all said and done next April. But guys, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the top 10 interior offensive linemen of the 2026 class, as well as the top 10 offensive tackles for the 2026 draft class. Leave me those thoughts down below in the comment section. Reply back to this post on X, or you can shoot me a DM on X as well. You can follow me there at TJ Wengert, spelled Wengert. So reach out, give me those thoughts. Love to have a conversation with you. And let me know some of your favorite prospects in this offensive line class. And then let me know what you think about the corner class, because that is going to be next up, hopefully with our special guest joining us. But until next time, my name is TJ Wengert, signing off.